Hello, I'm Dr. Devashish Sengupta, and this is my latest book, The Life of Z, Understanding Digital Preteen and Adolescent Generation. What do today's preteen and adolescents really want? Okay, let us first understand who today's preteens and adolescents are. They are a different generation altogether, who are called popularly Generation Z, and whom I call them Zeners. So, we are dealing with a completely different generation. When we talk about what they really need and want, okay, let us look at what they need. The top two things that they need, according to me, the first is to be understood. A little bit more empathy to understand their attitudes, their mindsets, their life issues and challenges would really be helpful. And the second thing that they need is time from the loved ones, especially parents. Not only the quality of time, but quantum of time. The time is most precious asset for them. And what they want, okay, the top three things that they want: dream, discovery, and digital. The first is dream, the freedom to pursue their own dreams, the freedom to follow their own passion, not to be really bound by societal and parental norm of what success is, but the freedom to pursue what they want to really do. Second is learning through exploration, learning through experimentation, and not really the rote learning that is prevalent these days. And finally, a digital life, digital technologies, digital content, digital gadgets, the ability to use these technologies to connect seamlessly across the world, to share what they have to. That's what they want. So what they need is to be understood and time, and what they want is dream, discover, and a digital life. Thank you very much.
We begin the session, The Intelligence Behind RAW, with Mr. Nitin Gokhale and Mr. Vikram Sood. The session will be moderated by Mr. Kulpreet Yadav. Mr. Vikram Sood, a career intelligence officer for 31 years after heading the Research and Analysis Wing, RAW, is currently advisor at the Observation Research Foundation. He writes regularly on security, foreign relations, and strategic issues in journals and newspapers. His book, The Unending Game, a former RAW chief's insights into espionage, was published in 2018. Mr. Nitin A. Gokhale is a media entrepreneur, strategic affairs analyst, and author of more than half a dozen books on military history, insurgencies, and wars. Mr. Gokhale now writes, lectures, and analyzes security and strategic matters in Indo-Pacific and travels regularly to take part in various seminars and conferences. He is also a popular visiting faculty at India's Defence Servicing, Staff College, and other defence institutions in the country. Mr. Kulpreet Yadav, an author of 14 books, retired voluntarily from the armed forces to pursue a career in writing in 2014. He was the winner of the Best Fiction Writer for 2018 award at the Gurgaon Literature Festival. He lives in New Delhi. I now request Mr. Kulpreet Yadav to take the session forward.
Thank you, Pranaya. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you. My name is Kulpreet Yadav. I'm very excited to be in this session. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you, but not Mr. Sood, I think.
So Mr. Sood, perhaps you'll have to adjust your...
Okay.
Now
you
can. Okay. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Very happy to be in this session with two experts. You just heard their introductions. So let us start straight away. This session is going to be for 1 hour. And this session we will try to handle in 3 parts. In the first part, I will be asking specific questions to Mr. Gokhale and Mr. Sood with respect to the books that they've written. In the middle part, for about 30 minutes, I've got some very interesting questions that I'll be asking them. Uh, and finally, in the last 15 minutes, there will be audience participation. I already have 3 questions posted on Twitter by some of the followers of these two gentlemen, and the option remains open for anyone who wants to send in questions and through the private chat box. So with that, let us start. Welcome, Mr. Gokhale and Mr. Sood, to this session.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Okay, please allow me to begin with Mr. Vikram Sood. And my questions are going to be mostly from your first book. For the viewers, I'm sure you'll know. In case you don't, Mr. Sood has written 2 books. The first one was called Unending Game, and these questions are from that book. This came out in 2018. Am I right, Mr. Sood?
That's right.
So the first question is, let's keep it light in the beginning, because most of the reviews about your book have said that this book is more or less an introduction to the world of espionage for the masses. So tell us, what are the traits that makes a perfect spy?
Well, that's a question been asked very often, and it's a very difficult question to answer because how do you define perfection in a spy? Is he the one who gets you the most intelligence? Does he get you timely intelligence? Or does he, in the process, get exposed? You know, so does he, does he stand out amongst the people? That is, is he visible? So a perfect spy actually is a man who delivers the best intelligence on time.
Okay.
If he does not deliver on time, then he may as well have not done it. And he's perfect because it's not traceable to him.
Excellent.
So if you get those things, then you are perfect. Otherwise, you can be a James Bond.
Okay. Then you'll be James Bond. So timing is, of course, very crucial, and I think that extension to that, if I'm not wrong, is actionable intelligence, because intelligence remains actionable within a time window. Is that correct?
That there are 2 kinds of intelligence reports. One is, you can get hold of a priceless document which is not actionable, but it gives you insights into the working of the enemy. That's priceless document. It's not actionable immediately, but there is these days the most actionable intelligence comes for terror-related or allied activities that can be acted upon immediately. So that is actionable intelligence. That has to come on time. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. But the other one, strategic intelligence, which can be long duration, that is also important. And many a times, many of us miss that, concentrating on the actionable intelligence because that gives you kind of a recognition, immediate recognition that you've delivered, and so on and so forth. तो स्टडीज का क्या बात है 4 साल के बाद पता लगेगा क्या होगा so it's beyond my time. How does it matter?
Okay.
That's
Okay.
the difference.
One of the things that okay, so thanks. One of the things that particularly the youngsters, and I think I understand most of the audience who are listening in now are college going. That is the kind of following Pune Literature Festival has over the years that I've attended and seen. Now, the question that they have in their mind is, how is intelligence gathered? So how information actually becomes intelligence? I know a lot of it is there in your book, Unending Game, but if you can just tell us in brief how information gets converted into intelligence.
Okay. First is the human intelligence. Okay. The human source actually provides intelligence from either what he has heard or seen, or he's got a document that proves what he's got. That is human intelligence. But that may not be enough. So you need to have listening in or viewing in capabilities. It can be aerial reconnaissance, satellite reconnaissance these days. It can be reconnaissance of the net. You can nowadays you can have information you can gather from social media. So all that information, technical intelligence, um,
Human intelligence,
human intelligence, technical intelligence of various kinds, audio, visual, maps, all these things
satellites.
can at some stage become part of one report.
Mhm.
You know, it's a military movement, so you must have satellites, imagery of the weaponry that they're carrying, or and voice of what are they saying to each other, or messages that they're
Mhm.
exchanging. And then physical deployment of soldiers, the mindset of the general that you want to know. Is he a courageous fellow? Is he going to pack up and run? So these are
Mhm.
factors that go into determining what the enemy might conceivably do given this information. And no intelligence, rarely I would say, is 100%. There's a lot of what we call reading behind the wall. You have 75% of the information, you want to be able to assess what would be the remaining 25%, given your knowledge of the man, the equipment, their past behavior, etc., etc. So it's a game we all play like that, I imagine.
Mhm. It's a game, of course. Mr. Gokhale, would you like to add something to this?
Well,
How information gets converted into intelligence?
I think,
Just
I mean, I
briefly.
can't really go beyond what Mr. Sood has said. He has been a practicing espionage chief as well as a practitioner. But there is a lot of similarity between what journalists do, at least in my time, what journalists used to do is to be on the ground, keep their eyes and ears open, get various strands of information and put it together. And then perhaps our
Mhm.
first reports, which are first drafts of history, as they call it, journalism being the first draft of history, were also useful for the people who were practitioners of espionage. I'm sure it still
Oh
does.
yes.
Because there is a we
Mhm.
are on the I mean, we are on the two sides of the coin in a way, if you see, because of course a lot of people have this idea that espionage is like James Bond, what James Bond does, but I think it's back-breaking work. Espionage. It is it also entails a lot of sifting the wheat from the chaff, and then coming to a kind of a conclusion, which is also a similar process in journalism. At least it used to be when I was a practitioner on the ground. And
Mhm.
therefore, I think espionage is not something as glamorous as it is made out to be in the films. It matters that you should have the knowledge, you should have the courage, you should have the patience. I think that's the three attributes I would think the spies or the people who practice espionage must have. Like again, journalists, I would add, or I would dare to add.
Mhm.
Mr. Booth may have some more ideas on this.
Mhm.
No, I think
No,
I
Mr.
think
Sood, it
the
is. Please go ahead. Yeah.
no, I think the life of a spy in a hostile country is perhaps the loneliest life because he has no
Mhm.
friends. He can't depend on anyone. And he's entirely on his own. Entirely, entirely. So he must have
Mhm.
patience and courage and nerves of steel.
Yeah.
Nerves of steel. Yeah, because he will be in contact with people. He will be going
You
around,
know,
meeting, doing stuff, knowing fully well that anybody can backstab or double cross or
yeah,
anything can happen.
a word wrongly pronounced or an idiom not used in that part of the world. It may be
Mhm.
Punjabi, but there may be different connotations of Doaba Punjabi and Rawalpindi Punjabi. You use the wrong word and they'll say, "Oye, ye kitthon aaya?
Hmm.
Where does he come from?"
Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So man has to be on his guard all the time.
Absolutely. Mr. Sood, I would like to ask you about in 70s, as you mentioned in your book, and a lot of us know about this, that KGB had planted almost 1,700 stories in the Indian media, in the
Yeah.
newspapers, and etc. And also, there were a lot of politicians and senior bureaucrats, if I'm not wrong, who were on the payrolls of KGB. Now, this is public information and knowledge to a large extent. How much of this kind of a phenomena is prevalent now when there's so much of technology, and it is really hard for someone to bribe, and it is also equally hard for someone to accept? Does it still
No, I
happen?
think that part of the
Planting
game
of
continues.
stories as spoken
That that
narratives.
that that
Yeah.
that is not going to change, because your ability to the human contact in an espionage, and the ability to talk one to one, or at least know where it is coming from, will still remain. What comes out in the social media, etc., is the periphery, is the spin off. It's not the real thing. The real thing is only with politician A or B or general so and so, or a diplomat, or another intelligence officer. So that will not change. I don't think that is going to change. Whatever technology you have, and technology will play a
Okay.
huge role in the future. It already is.
It already is. Yeah.
The essence will not change. The human factor will not change.
Okay.
Because we used to,
Can I come?
when we were younger,
Sorry.
operating taps. Sorry, just an example. When we were young and actually operating sources across the border, etc., we used to insist, I want to meet the fellow from whom you got the information. That was, sort of way of confirming that he's actually getting it. That's how it was. Now things are different. Of course, you can talk on the phone. You can talk on, like we are talking.
Okay. Can I come to you, Mr. Gokhale, now? You have written, as per the research that I've done, more than I think 8 or 9 books. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have so far written
Uh,
7, and I have just to sort of plug my book. The latest has just come
okay.
out. It's going to be
What is
released.
this called?
Biography of
Noor
Manohar Parrikar.
Parrikar. Okay. Wow.
That's his birthday on the
Okay.
13th, on Sunday. But anyway, that aside, yes, 7
Okay.
books.
Okay.
The last one
7 books.
was on, on the founder of R&AW.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you some questions about that book. That is Mr. Cow. And what fantastic reviews and the research that you've done for that book. Uh, so my congratulations for writing that book, because that part of the founder of Raw was actually not available in the popular media, and you filled that gap. So excellent, and congratulations. I want to ask you if you can briefly tell us, Mr. Cow, who is an intensely private person, and you have chosen to call him a gentleman on the cover of the book. So, how was he a gentleman? A few special qualities that you were really impressed with.
Well, I never had the fortune of meeting him, but the portrait that emerges from talking to people like Mr. Sood, and even people who were working with him, with Mr. Kao, it emerges, and his family, and of course some of his letters, some of the decisions he took. It emerges that he was a very ethical man. I mean, it's a contradiction in terms. Maybe some people may feel that a spy master or a spy being ethical, but he was ethical, he was gentlemanly, he was decent, but at the same time ruthless when it came to his job. I think that is the portrait I got
Okay.
After speaking to different people and looking at some of the decisions that he took. Remember, he was more of a institution builder, because he built several institutions. He, of course, set up the ARC or the SFF, ARC, and then the R&AW in 1968 from scratch. And within 3 years, we know what spectacular results they got in the 1971 war. We are in the middle of that period, which happened exactly 49 years ago. Between 3rd of December to 16th of December was the 1971 war. But what went behind that war is what this man actually coordinated and led the behind the scene operations, and in training the Mukti Bahini, training, getting people together, all that. But why did I call him gentleman spy master is exactly because of the qualities that he had. He was a absolutely decent man, well read, impeccably dressed, stylishly dressed, if I may say so. And of course, he
Almost like a James Bond, one can say.
yeah, but he wasn't the James Bond in that form. I mean, he didn't sort of run operations. He ran spies, certainly, and I mean the result is all there. So it was difficult because he was intensely private, and he had left instructions that certain documents will not be available until 2017, 2027 rather, 25 years after his death. So three more files remain to be opened in the Nehru Memorial Library. There's a Sikkim operation, Bangladesh, and then his second stint with Mrs. Gandhi after 1980. They will be explosive, I'm sure, and I'm waiting for the next 7 years now to get hold of them.
Okay. Uh, and recently I was reading Mr. B.N. Mullick's memoir, that book, The Chinese Betrayal: My Years with Nehru. In that, I think at that time, Mr. Kao was a junior officer working in the IB under Mr. Mullick, and there's a long passage in which he mentions quite a bit of qualities of Mr. Kao when both of them had gone to Hong Kong to investigate the circumstances that led to the crash of the Kashmir Princess. So when I was reading that, I will of course be picking up your book. It is on my wish list and to-do list. But the qualities were absolutely even the Chinese. They were very they agreed to the final feedback of the investigation that he gave. Coming to Bangladesh, since you mentioned, what exactly? I mean, of course, Mukti Bahini is one factor, but what else did the intelligence do, uh, which which led to our success? His role,
Oh,
Mr.
tremendous.
Kaur's role.
Yeah. So his role, more than, of course, he was the leader of the organization. He coordinated the backroom operations, but his main man in contact with Mujibur Rahman, Bongo Bandhu Mujibur Rahman, was P.N. Banerjee, or somebody who was called Nath Babu in East Pakistan. This gentleman was originally IB, then of course both dual hats he wore in Calcutta, and he had full access to Mujibur Rahman, so he knew exactly what was happening there in East Pakistan, and he was the one who was a linchpin of the entire backroom operations of the R&AW. R&AW, of course, used to coordinate. You know, there were the sailors who came, who defected from East Pakistan, the Bengali sailors and officers. They were brought to India. They used to be sent to Calcutta. So all kinds of things happened. He had started this operation way back. I would say the connect with Mujibur Rahman way back in 68, 69. Before, in fact, 3 years before the actual liberation happened, or even earlier, I would say the contacts were there. So I think it shows how patient one has to be. You know, this was a long-term operation. It was like the ties were built, or the confidence was gained over a long period of time with the leadership of the Awami League. And they had great insights into East Pakistan and what was happening in East Pakistan. That helped the Indian Army and the Indian military to then sweep through what happened in the operation. That was a spectacular military operation, but the stage was set by those 7, 8 months of work done by Mr. Kao, Mr. P.N. Banerjee, Mr. Shankaran Nair, and of course S.S. Oban, who trained the Mukti Bahini as the head of the SFF, and also led other people there. You know, many of those exploits still remain hidden, which I have not been able to get access to.
Patience and planning. These are the two words, I think.
Right.
Okay. Can we go ahead to the general questions now?
Please.
Mr. Sood, I want to ask you about the formation of RAW. I believe you were earlier with the Indian Postal Services, and when the RAW was formed, that is the time that you came into RAW, and of course it is linked to 1962 war and the debacle that happened there. Uh, but can you tell us, was it really because of IB's failure? Did IB really fail in 1962? Or what are the
I,
circumstances that led to
well,
formation of RAW?
I think we have to be a little more generous or with this, or kind. You know, intelligence agencies work as providers of intelligence according to the needs of the government of the day. nor do we make policies. Now, all this was controlled in India in the first 15, 20 years by one man. And he apparently had greater faith in his own abilities to deliver, Jawaharlal Nehru, than to rely on intelligence inputs. So, not much attention was paid to the work of intelligence apart from looking after internal communists or internal right wingers, and Kashmir had become a problem. So, the attention was there. So, by default, the the war started. I mean, it wasn't as if even we had planned it. As the story goes, it was announced that we will be throwing the Chinese out one fine morning, and that's how it started. So, unless you pay attention to intelligence as a necessary it's a requirement of statecraft, not a burden, it won't succeed. And not only 62, we had 65 also.
Yeah, exactly.
Where we got intelligence at that time from the shepherds of Gulmarg, that these Bakarwals had told that there are intruders in Kashmir. That was the first indication. So that was we got over it, but then we didn't have enough advanced intelligence. Then 66 we had the Mizo uprising. So all these factors put together. Plus, you must also remember there was also a growing thought in India that a monolith of an intelligence organization doing both internal and external is not good for the country for a number of reasons. I mean, you just get too big. You do the things that totalitarian countries do. Chinese, even the Russians now don't do it anymore. But the Chinese and the Soviet Union have just one major intelligence agency. So it was decided, the thought process that started that we should have two separate intelligence because the work ethos is different, the requirements are different, the working pattern is different. Here the intelligence bureau, it works at home with the backing of the law, our own law. They're not violating any local laws. But the external agency has to work against the law of the country to which they're assigned. They have to convert patriots into traitors. Here it's the other way around. So the systems are different. And therefore, to decide I think 67, 68, 66, 67, the thought process started. And as Nitin has brought out in his book, that's when it built up to the creation of a new agency called the R&AW. And then the conscious decision at that time was, because the R&AW was being formed as a breakaway from the IB, that the R&AW must be multi-talented. You must multi-source talent. And we get experience and expertise from all parts of the system. So that's how we took customs, income tax, myself, and number of others joined from 71 onwards.
And 68 R&AW was formed, and since then the results are of course there for everyone to see, whether it was the 71 war or any subsequent border clashes or wars that or problem that we have faced, including Balakot strike, as I was reading. So R&W has had a very, very important and central role in these operations. Would you like to say something about this since the formation of RAW? How do you rate the success of RAW in these security matters?
There are international agencies who do the pecking order of intelligence agencies.
That's right.
Which is the best and which is
Thank
the
you.
worst. There are 10. Normally they list 10. We figure about the middle. So
That's
that's
really
not
good.
bad, given the circumstances, given our resources, given the threats that we have. It's not a bad performance. And at one stage, I remember, I can't remember the name of the book, unfortunately. A French expert had said that the analysis done by the R&AW on China was perhaps the best he had ever seen. So that was commendable. And so we've not done too badly. We've had our setbacks, and so the major setback was 1977, just 9 years after creation, when Morarji brought out the battering ram and slashed, the axe, and he just went chop, 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 and he cut off operations, cut off, shut down stations. 9-year-old agency which has had this setback so early, it took us time to recover from that. And unfortunately, the 90s were a period when, again, we had what we need in an intelligence organization is a continuity of political order. I mean, we all need it everywhere, but in intelligence, in our system, particularly so. We didn't have that in the 90s. We had too many governments changing, too many ideologies changing. So it was floundering around till 1998, when we started having trouble with Pakistan once again. And we had a fortuitous, I might call it that, a change of government in Delhi, who thought more robustly about these kinds of situations. So, and that was the period when I was mercifully in charge. So that it was relatively easy dealing with the kinds of things we would want to deal with.
Great.
So I can tell you how it was till 2003. Beyond that, I really won't be able to say, because it's not fair. I don't know anything. But by the look of things, we're doing pretty good.
All right. All right. Can I come to you, Mr. Gokhale, now?
Yes.
One of the cases that everyone discusses, and it's really um, very important now, is the case of Mr. Kulbhushan Jadhav. Uh, I know it's a complex case, but is it just a case of someone being at the wrong place at the wrong time? What are your
Well,
thoughts about this?
so, Pakistanis have said that he is a spy, but as far as my knowledge goes and what public domain information that is available, he was a naval officer and he was running some private operations after retirement for in that area in Iran Pakistan border, where he sought better fortune after retirement. So the Pakistanis would have kept watch, and they're always looking. I think all agencies look for that kind of opportunity where they can catch someone and label them as spies or people who are working against that country. So my thoughts are that they got lucky. He was the wrong man at the wrong place, and of course, mercenaries in that area would have got some money to kidnap him and hand him over to the Pakistanis. We really don't know the circumstances under which that happened. But whatever I glean from various inputs is this is what I would say. So it's a complicated case. If he was a spy, why would there be kind of information about him available, about him being a former naval officer, him being his family being there? All that otherwise gets obliterated or at least is kept hidden. So I think it's a very complicated and a complex case.
Mr. Sood, would you like to add to
I
this?
just wanted to add that one of the first things the Pakistanis said when they had got hold of Yadav was um, that he has an Indian passport.
Exactly.
Now,
Yeah.
every intelligence agency knows that when you infiltrate a man somewhere else, you surely don't send him on your own passport. We would have, if it had been an intelligence agency or agent of the Indians, you would have sent him on some other identity. Could have been Iranian, could have been Pakistani, or anything else, but certainly not this obvious giveaway with his name, father's name, address, everything given there. and visas. So it's odd that they picked him up. Had they not announced this, would have been perhaps smarter of them, but they didn't do that. They announced that, and that was their basis for saying that he is a spy. And the government of India has owned that he's an Indian national.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I
So
believe clearly the video, the confession video, the experts have found out that it was doctored
that is doctor.
clearly.
That is obviously doctored tape. It was. You can make anyone say anything in that kind of situations.
Okay, let me come to a very interesting question. I just want to ask you before that, Mr. Sood and Mr. Gokhale, have you seen this web series called as Fauda,
Yeah.
Fauda?
Mm-hmm.
Fauda? You
Yeah.
okay?
Very
So
impressive.
very impressive. So I just want to ask you, how much damage the wrong projection of Raw in the Indian films and the Indian web series has done to the agency and the reputation of the country? Because Paula has become such a benchmark now. You know,
Yeah.
it has become a foundation for the
Yeah.
Palestinians and the Jews to come closer and look at some kind of negotiation. So, but what is wrong with our industry? I mean, why can't they get experts like you and at least get it fundamentally right?
You see, you want to make a story which is dramatic. So
Paula
you
is dramatic. Paula is
must have all
dramatic
the
and also accurate.
razzmatazz and the blonde girl or equivalent and sharpshooters and doing all sorts of activity. No, that's not the real spy world. The real spy world, as Nitin also mentioned, can be long, enduring, boring, dull, all that, and
Mhm.
repetitive. So you
Repetitive,
can't
yeah.
put that in a movie. The movie has to be um, different. However, there can be very good movies made if you're professionally going to get facts. You know this movie by Spielberg, Bridge of Spies.
Yes.
It's
No,
the
I haven't seen it.
story.
I've heard about
It's a wonderful movie. You must see it.
Wonderful. Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
story about the exchange of Abel, Rudolph Abel, with Francis Gary Powers in the
Yes.
Cold War days, and
it. Mhm.
how Abel was first picked up by the FBI and then interrogated, and then he was jailed. But then the exchange took place. It's a beautifully done movie. It is there is no histrionics in it. There's no dramatization, over dramatization, but it holds you to the edge of your seat from the first shot till the end.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's a
Anyone
professional movie. That's a professional movie.
question movie?
What we
Anyone
make is
approached?
the masala entertainment.
Okay. Anyone approached you,
Ekta
Mr.
Tiger,
Sood,
for
from?
instance. Huh?
Yeah, Ekta Tiger, of course. But we know about it. But has anyone approached you from the OTT platforms or the Bollywood for being a story consultant?
Not
You at least
seriously.
get to the factory, no?
Not
No?
seriously. I mean, if you tell them the things I'm telling you now, they're not interested.
Okay, they're not interested. Mr. Gokhale, has anyone approached you? Uh,
Yes, in fact, based on my book on Mr. Cow, there is a project that is on right now,
yeah,
which
I
is
read about it somewhere. Yeah.
which is being mentored by Karan Johar. But the team that is writing the screenplay and
Mm,
conceptualizing the film, it's going to be a Hindi film. Is
okay.
very young and very enthusiastic, and they want to stick to facts. So, and it's going to be mostly based on the 1971 operations rather than the entire life of Mr. Cow. So I've been
Okay.
a consultant to them. Hopefully, I'll be able to hold them, hold their feet to fire, and not allow them to show Mr. Cow running around trees in the film.
Okay.
But
Okay.
That'll be a
that's what
game
I'm trying
changer.
to
If,
Mhm. Mm.
So
Uh,
that of course is there. Yeah.
okay,
this
let me come
movie
to the next
Madras
question.
Cafe had a few good snippets
Madras
of
Cafe.
intelligence. Yeah, that
Okay.
was pretty good,
Okay.
well done.
Okay. Let me come to the next question, and that is about think tanks. You know, there is, of course, think tanks are a kind of an extension to the whole security apparatus for any country, and they really contribute in multiple ways, as we know. How's the scene in India? Do we really have the kind of budget uh, to sponsor and to support the activities of a large number of think tanks, or this is a neglected area? Can I begin with you, Mr. Sood?
Okay, there are basically, I think, three kinds of think tanks we have in India. One is mostly government sponsored, defense forces, MEA. Then you have privately funded. Privately funded could also be funds from abroad.
Mhm.
And then there is the third category. These guys are just enthusiastic people who get together. They might have talent, but their reach is limited. The other thing with our think tanks, not with our think tanks, but with our system is think tanks have never really been taken very seriously up until recently.
Okay.
I mean, they were parking slots for many. They were just time pass for others. The civil servant didn't have the time for whatever they were churning, giving them. But now we find a difference that the ministries, certain ministries, the ministries of defense and external affairs and others, come up with requirements for study done on a particular aspect of whatever.
Mhm.
So, which makes a lot of difference. And there's also a growing requirement I can see from private sector for some data and information. Because our own concept of threats has changed. It's no longer just the military and terrorism and
Mhm.
so on, law and order. It's also economics. It's trade. It's the cipher world, climate change. These are factors that are coming into play now, and more expertise is required on this. Sometimes
Mhm.
the bureaucrats don't have that. It's not there for them, so they
Okay.
outsource this. That's
Mhm.
where it's becoming more relevant. But it's nowhere near what the American system is. It's
Absolutely, that's
huge.
what I'm.
It's a
Yeah,
huge
and
system.
also, and also, if I may say so, the think tanks that I've interacted with, there is little participation by youngsters, and when I say youngsters, I mean people under 40. There are hardly any attendance, just in the audience or as researchers or as people part of that group. And that I think is definitely not a good tendency, because eventually the others, the older and the experts, are going to fade away, and they have to give the charge to someone. So can I come to you, Mr. Gokhale? Any thoughts of yours? You've been a strategic affairs analyst for such a long time. What are your thoughts?
No, so I tend to agree with Mr. Sood that maybe 20 years ago, if you had asked this question, I would have dismissed think tanks as just geriatric clubs, really, in many cases, like post-retirement sinecures for many
Mhm.
people from the government and from the forces. But that has changed over the past 10 years, I would say. There are think tanks which are particularly focused on certain things, and there are many more youngsters who are coming in and are becoming prominent faces. Those
Okay.
under 40, like you mentioned, are
Mhm.
becoming prominent faces. Today, they are an important voice. They are heard, they are read, and their voices are taken seriously, is what I would say. That change has occurred in the past decade or so. And that's because India's stock has risen, and simultaneously, this requirement for experts on Indian economy, Indian policy on climate change, Indian policy on trade, and of
Mhm.
course on the strategic issues has exponentially risen. The demand for that kind of expertise, and therefore youngsters are coming in larger numbers, and they're very bright. I mean, I must say this, that their understanding at their age and their ability to analyze and also comment upon certain events is remarkable. When I look back, maybe at their age, I wouldn't have had that kind of understanding or ability to analyze. So I am very gung ho about this. But of course, it needs a lot of money. It needs nurturing of the talent,
Okay.
both in the private sector and the government. And of course, it needs to be a little more, I would say, outward looking rather than limiting it to the same set of people. which has been the bane of think tanks everywhere. It's not that it's only in India, but I'm sure it will change as we go along.
Can you quickly list a few think tanks that the youngsters could probably approach and be a part of?
Oh yes, ORF is one now
ORF is
gained
of course there.
huge prominence. There are every armed force has one. Like claws is for the Indian Army, CAPS is for the Indian Air Force, the NMF is for the Indian Navy, and then there is the USI, which is the oldest military think tank in Asia, or at least in India. And then there
Mhm.
are others in elsewhere apart from Delhi. And I'm glad about is that there are important, or at least I would say intelligent people who are coming together in various other places apart from Delhi, Pune, Bangalore, Chennai. So Chennai has this Center for China Studies, C3S as they call it. There is also MEA's own thing, newly created think tank called Triple CS, Center for Contemporary China Studies. It's an official think tank MEA has now.
Mhm.
Also, Pune International Center is coming up quite well because of Mr. Mashelkar, Vijay Kelkar, and others who are doing stellar work in non-military or non-security field, in economics, in climate change, in trade, all that. So there are enough of and Takshila, for instance, in Bangalore, is also
Mhm.
doing some work. So I would recommend. I would think that there are quite a few, Indian think tanks. Then there is, of course, Carnegie, which has established a think tank in India or a branch in India. There is Brookings used to be Brookings India. Now they call it something else, but the people remain the same. So there are quite a few in that sense. But we require many more.
We require many more. Okay. Uh, yeah, Mr. Sood, a question for you. Can you or anyone recognize a spy in public? You go to a market to have a coffee, and can you recognize and can you say this man is a spy or this?
Well, Kulpreet, I'll tell you, we have a problem recognizing a mole in our own organizations.
Very well
So
said.
to
How can we
to find
identify?
out that so and so is a spy in that crowd is unless he says I'm a spy, it's not easy to know. From
Okay.
I mean, you can
Okay.
find out a man is behaving oddly, but that doesn't make him a spy.
Okay.
You know,
All right. Just briefly, the final question of this session before we go to the audience questions, and that is just brief take of both of you. Now, earlier we had only Pakistan to deal with, and China was there, but then somewhere, it fallen back. Now it is China plus Pakistan solid, and we got a massive problem on our hands. Do you think it is time, as it is indicative, that India needs to get more and more closer with the United States and have a front in which we can be formidable and can be in a position where we can't be threatened by the combined forces of China and Pakistan? Briefly, sir. Mr. Sood, could you hear
it's
me?
it's for me. Oh, sorry, I thought it was for Nitin.
No, no, for
No,
one by
I've always felt that right from the beginning that we are actually been in a two-front war,
Mhm.
virtually from the beginning. 47 it started. 49 a hostile China took over in Beijing, and we didn't realize it was going to be hostile to us. And we saw the results in the next few years in Tibet.
Mhm.
And from then on, one after another, there have been incidents, major incidents, wars, and so on, terror. Everything has been flung at us. And over the last few years, the Chinese and the Pakistanis are getting closer and closer. So we are now already in a two-front situation, with China always being the leader.
Mhm.
The harm that the Chinese can do is far more than the harm that Pakistani can do to us. And that is the problem that we have to handle largely on our own. It's good to have USA on your side, but I'm not sure whether if it comes to the crunch, how ultimately it's going to be our battle. But it's good to be have closer to the China Americans than we ever been before.
Okay.
It helps your self confidence. It helps you to take bigger, better decisions.
Also, it's a huge
But
deterrent.
War is
It,
ours.
it,
Battle is
yeah,
ours.
battle is ours. Um, all right. I don't want to go towards the question of military preparation. 62 vis-a-vis now when it comes to China, because that is going to take us on a long road of discussions. I think the time is also right for me to move to the audience questions. I've got three audience questions right now. The first one is by Mr. Anurag K on Twitter. He says, "Hi, could you please ask about Pakistan's Center of Artificial Intelligence and Computing, CENTRAC, CENTRAIC, and where are we in this extremely important topic in emerging technology for military planners?" Could you get this? No. I
So
think
you,
probably
I
you'll have to
can't hear you.
adjust your. Can you, Mr. Gokhale? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Now it is
So
okay.
now it is okay. So I was saying that someone has asked this question. Pakistan's Center of Artificial Intelligence and Computing. This is. Are we somewhere close to this? Do we have a similar organization?
Well,
You
I
know,
don't.
quite frankly,
Mhm.
Nathan, you're answering.
No, no, you go ahead, sir. You go ahead, sir.
You can act.
Either
Okay,
of
I'm
you.
just going to say that I have not kept in touch with the intelligence organization's activities after I retired. So
That
what
is
they're doing
2003.
actually on the ground, I don't know. But I would imagine that anybody knows that this is required to be done. How good or bad they are, I wouldn't know. And also, if I knew, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
It is better to
Uh,
keep the other guy guessing than to tell you how good or bad you are.
exactly. Mr. Gokhale, I'll ask you the next question, and that is by someone called as A. Sinha Roy on Twitter. He's asked this question: how far have you progressed in restoring our covert operation capabilities since the time IK Gujral, in bracket foolishly, decided to disband our spy networks?
Well, again, I have not been part of any organization, leave alone R&AW. And like Mr. Sood has said, even if he knew, he wouldn't say it. All that I'll say is that I think the results are proof enough in, say, Balakot or in Uri, where you get that actionable intelligence and the action is taken by the military or the Air Force and the Army, which was done in 2016 and 2019 respectively. So I think that is proof enough that our covert capability is as good as anybody else, or under the circumstances, whatever it can be. So therefore, I don't think we should worry too much about this, and sort of wait. I mean, leave it to the professionals who are doing this. And Mr. Sood wants to say something.
I think this thing
Mhm.
about old Gujarat having shut down operation is a bit overdone. You know, it
Mhm.
wasn't really that. What Morarji did was terrible, but not what. This was a sort of a policy nuance, a change.
You mentioned about Buraji. You did.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what he
All right.
did, but this
Uh,
one was different.
uh, Okay. Mr. Sood, I've got a question for you. This is from Mr. Rajiv Prabhu. And he says, how much does political governance maturity matter as far as the functioning of these agencies are concerned? I think it's a very important question. Uh, Politicians, maturity, first of all, in understanding how espionage works, and thereafter handling these organizations in a way that nurtures them, promotes them professionally. So,
I
would you
think
like to respond, Mr. Sood?
you actually answered it pretty well yourself. You know,
Okay.
the political ability to understand the need of an intelligence organization for the nation is is required to be able to go forward in doing whatever you have to do. If you don't have that, then you are going to be all the time suspicious of the organization and downplay it. And when the crunch comes, you will blame the organization. So there has to be that kind of maturity that we see in the West,
Mhm.
where
How do we get that?
intelligence.
How do we get that?
I think it's coming. It's there. It's on its way. We're
It's
getting more and more accustomed to dealing
Right.
with the intelligence because the threats have been such that without intelligence, we couldn't have solved many of our problems. Without timely intelligence, terror nets would not have been broken.
Okay.
Or as we say, Balakot would not have happened, or Uri would not have happened, or so many other things that we don't even talk about
Yeah.
would not have happened. So,
All right.
despite that, there will be mistakes. Despite that, there will be a slip ups. Errors will take place. Mistakes will happen. But that is not the sum total. You take the big picture.
Okay.
And governance means, as the Chinese Sun Tzu, I think, he said, you must give the intelligence the best of everything, because they
Best of
are your
everything.
first guard of defense. I wish,
Okay.
I keep quoting that in all my writings. This is what he said. I'm not saying it, he's saying it. So,
Forewarned with forearmed, as they say. So
yeah, even Kautilya used to talk about it. And
that's right. Absolutely.
so, and
Yeah.
majority of
So
the
yeah,
media, majority of the media,
majority of the media. Absolutely. Yeah,
because
that's equally important. Yeah.
because you may have the information. My point is, you must have the ability to decide whether I should report it or not.
Exactly.
Do I do
Okay.
harm to my own people or do I serve my people? That's the
All right.
criteria.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
used to have that in the early stages of my
Yes.
career. I was told it is more important what you don't write than what you write.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I was told
Absolutely.
by
Yeah.
Mr. Kamath, who was a very famous and a very tallest of the journalists India has produced. He had told me in 1984, it is more important what you don't write than what you write.
True.
I
Very
agree.
true.
I agree. I agree. So I've got now the final question for Mr. Gokhale, and this is from Surya Kanegaonkar. I hope I've got the pronunciation
Yeah,
right.
I
The
don't.
question is, as the Indo-US relationship develops on the intelligence sharing front, how do we protect our strategic autonomy? Very interesting and very pertinent question.
I think this is again overblown. If I can borrow from Mrs. Sood, that what is strategic autonomy? Ultimately, the decision is taken by the decision makers, not based on what the Americans or the British or the Israelis or the Japanese will tell you. Yeah, the strategic autonomy being threatened just because you develop closer relationship is, I think, a misnomer. Because it's a give and take. The United States will also want information from India. Why are they establishing that strategic relationship with India on all fronts, not just intelligence, but in defense, in other sectors like cyber and satellite intelligence that they are providing to us because they want us to be counterweight to the Chinese. But we are very clear that we are not going to be. India is very clear; it's not going to be alliance partner, junior alliance partner. India always had an independent streak of decision making, and I don't think we should worry too much about it.
Okay, great, great. So we've got final 5 minutes uh, to wrap up this session. Uh, any concluding, starting with Mr. Sood, that you would like to say? The topic was intelligence of raw. Would you like to add final points to this?
Thank you. First of all, Kulpreet, thank you very much for the way you moderated us. Nitin and I did not fight like people do on TV. But it was a delightful afternoon. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
making
sir.
it so pleasant and comfortable for both of us.
Yes, it indeed was. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, it was one of the finest I have been to. So the other thing was that intelligence is in our everyday life. We can't wish it away. We shouldn't wish it away. Not because I belong to that trade, but that it's a necessity. It is your first arm of defense and first arm of offense.
Mhm.
And it is 24/7. That's why I said the unending game. We fight on all the time. The second thing is intelligence also plays a vital role in developing narratives for your country.
Mhm. And that's your latest
You
book.
can have the best army, you can have the mightiest economy, the best technology, but unless you can sell your goods, unless you can establish superiority, it won't work. And why do we think that the Americans, having lost Vietnam, having failed in Afghanistan, Iraq, is still considered the mightiest power on earth? It's their narrative.
That's right.
The narrative has sustained that. So I'm leading to my second book, actually.
Yes,
Very
indeed.
clever of me.
Right.
The the ultimate goal is power and dominance. So
All right.
thank you again. Thank you, Pune International Literary Festival, for having me. And Nitin, your turn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So just one final thought. Mr. Sood's book, the narrative, the second book that he's written, it is actually a given now that it is not the armies and the militaries which have the larger force or the larger standing armies that tend to win the war. It is those who sell their stories better, those who write their stories better, tend to be looked at as winners. And like he said, I mean, there are case studies about Americans and others, and so we need to get our narrative right. And to do that, we must have more conscious citizens, more informed citizens, who will be, not just specialists. I mean, not depending on specialists alone, but even citizens will be speaking about intelligence and about military operations and otherwise. Only then we can have that kind of narrative dominance. Those who tend to dominate the narrative will also be seen as powerful countries in the future. And I think on that note, I would like to thank Kulpreet for an excellent session that we conducted, and of course Pune International Literary Festival. I wish I would have been able to come physically to Pune. After all, it's my hometown. I've lived out of Pune since 1983, so any opportunity to go back there is always welcome. Maybe next year. But just imagine we are doing this from Delhi, all three of us, or Delhi NCR as they call it, and we are speaking at the International Literature Festival. Thank you very much for this opportunity once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gokhale. Thank you, Mr. Sood. I was not able to take final few questions which are still coming in. I would request all the people who are watching now to please ask their questions on Twitter to these two gentlemen, and I'm sure they will to your questions. So thank you once again. It was a wonderful afternoon.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for such a captivating session, sir. It had all of us glued to our seats. We will begin our next session after a short break. Please join us for the power of social media at 3 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.